right, so let's go ahead and save this and flip back on over to the browser and check that out. We've got a red indicator. I'll go ahead and we'll flip back to the code. And for now, I am just going to change this to #FFF. And I'm going to save that to make it white, just like the background. And you can see that now it's as if we don't have the indicator at all. There is a small indication though, you may not be able to tell, but this is actually darker text than over here. This is slightly lighter, slightly opaque, and this hat's text is darker than the hoodie's text. So we still can tell that that is the selected tab, but we'll add more styles later to actually differentiate. Now we can flip back over into our code, and I'll show you another example of how we can use the styles from Make Styles, but on a regular component, not a Material UI component. Okay, and this will actually just be even an HTML element. All right, but this would apply the same for your own custom components. Although with custom components, there's actually an extra step that you have to take. But so here on a regular HTML element, instead of the classes prop, which is only for Material UI components, we'll just use the typical class name from React. Okay, so class is pure HTML, class name is JSX. So that is just some React basics. We have to use the class name property. Okay, but we still can just set this to classes dot and then whatever we'd like. So let's go ahead and we'll call this, well, actually we don't want it here on the search icon. Let's go ahead and what we'll do is we'll come up into the varX typography, and I actually want to wrap the var in varX in a span. Okay, going to make a span, and now on that span we can give it a class name of classes dot logo text, and now we can come up into our style object and add the logo text class. Inside of here we can specify a new color for our text, but we want it to be the off black color from our theme. Well, this is why it's so awesome that Material UI is passing the theme to our Make Styles call for us. So using this syntax, we have access to the entire theme inside of all of our styles. So what we can do is go and access our theme.palette.primary, or actually we can go, because the color isn't in our primary color, if we go to the theme.js, and we go up to our theme.palette, we actually want to access the common off black. Okay, so theme.palette.common.off black. And now if we go ahead and hit save and flip back on over, check that out. Now we've got the dark styled text. Let's do a couple more. So flip back on over into here, and on our tabs component, we're already passing in an indicator style, but that doesn't mean we can't specify all of the other styles or classes that are available to us, like the root class. This is what I'll use primarily when I'm kind of just throwing styles on a component and it doesn't need a real level of specificity. I just need it on that component, so I'll use the root class. All right, so specify classes, and then we'll just call this tabs. Classes.tabs. Now we'll come up, let's create tabs, and let's give this a margin left of auto and a margin right of auto. And what this is going to do before I hit save is it's going to add margin over here and margin over here on the right and left of our tabs, and that's going to push these icons down to the other side of the screen and keep our logo over here on the left. So I'll go ahead, save that, we flip on over, and you see exactly that happens. Now I wanted to show one thing, because some people, they actually find that they don't like having all of their styles in the same file as their component. Some people think it gets a little too clunky, especially if you have tons of styles. I think that's pretty valid, although honestly, I really like having all of my styles in the same file where I'm actually using them, because I feel like it's much easier to think about things and to find things without having to go and hunt around. I really like having everything in one place. So I'm going to keep this here for all the components that we'll build in this course, but I would like to show you an alternative in case you feel like you want to separate this some. Okay, so something you can do, let's go ahead and we'll actually take this entire make styles call. Let's go ahead and cut that out. All right, and if you don't want to do this, you don't have to follow along. And actually, I almost encourage you to keep everything in the file as I show, but if you're really feeling comfortable, you can go ahead and do this. Just know that you may have to search a little harder for things later on. Okay, but what you can do if you want to export your styles to another file outside your component, you could create a new file in the same folder, and you'd probably want to then make folders for each of these components so that it wouldn't all get too messy, but you could do header styles.js, and here you would import make styles from material UI core styles, and then go ahead and just export default and then paste your make styles call. Okay, just like that, super easy. Go ahead and save that, and then in header.js you would get rid of this. You would go ahead and up here you'll import header styles from /header styles, and then instead of const classes equals use styles, const classes equals header styles. Okay, so if I go ahead and save this, should be able to flip back on over. Let's refresh the page, and you can see everything is still exactly as it is supposed to be. So the styles are still being applied, but this time from an external style sheet. So if that's a pattern that appeals to you, I encourage you to check it out. I'm going to go ahead and delete that extra file though, because I won't be using that pattern, and I'm going to go ahead and undo those changes till we're back here with our make styles in header.js. Now, the last thing that I wanted to show before we go is if we flip back on over to the browser, and I need to make sure I save this, and then flip back on over to the browser. Sometimes you may have difficulty knowing which styles you need to overwrite in your material UI components, and you might have a hard time finding which class specifies the styles that is causing you trouble. Okay, so the sort of last ditch effort, last resort that you have for customizing material UI components is to go ahead and here inspect the element to bring up your element browser. And here, if you look at the span, you can see make styles logo text. So this is the class that we applied. But if you go up, you can see the H1 for our typography component with the class MUI typography-root. Okay, it also has the class MUI typography H1. Okay, so a sort of last ditch effort if I'm really having trouble overriding some styles. Although here, actually whatever is after the dash is the class that you would need to overwrite. So on our typography component, we could go here, we have the variant of H1, but we could get the classes prop, and we could specify in the object, since we see MUI typography-root and MUI typography-H1, we can use whatever's after the dash as the classes. That's what it's telling us. So we could specify the H1 and then classes.custom H1. Okay, so that is how you easily find the classes for the styles you're trying to overwrite. But there's an even more last ditch effort that you can go through. If that's not working for you and you're still having trouble, you can go ahead and you're just going to copy or take note of that class name. So the whole thing, MUI typography-H1. And then you could go ahead and come up to your style object and add a new style called @global. Okay, this is a special JSS property that allows you to set global styles. And here we can now specify those material UI classes. Okay, so you need to do quotes since there is a dash in the name, and put MUI typography-H1. Okay, so you'd put the exact class that you see in the inspector, and now you can go in and you can specify maybe font size 30 rem. We'll just do something crazy. And one important thing to remember whenever you're doing this that I definitely just forgot for a second is you need to add the dot in front of this, because this @global, when we specify the name like this, we actually can use the different CSS selectors like star or the child selector or all these different things. But that also means we need to specify the period that we're accessing the class MUI typography H1. If we don't have it, then it's looking for an element MUI typography H1. Okay, so make sure you have the period. Let's go ahead and save that, flip on over to the browser, and you can see this absolutely huge text that now appears because we are overriding the class globally here. Now, these global styles might interfere with some of your other styles that you have set throughout the application, so you want to only do this pretty sparsely and just make sure you're not overriding other styles that you may have already set. I'm going to go ahead and remove this though, because we won't need that. It's just an example. And that, just a reminder, is the last ditch effort that I use that definitely guarantees you'll be able to overwrite any material UI style that you find yourself presented with. All right, so hopefully this should give you a really nice understanding of the styling solution in Material UI, how you can apply styles to HTML elements, as well as using the classes prop to overwrite Material UI styles.